Why is there a second ring hidden in your drawer? Her voice trembled, aged but firm, as she held up the worn velvet box. Margaret's hands shook, and the faded letters tucked underneath the ring spilled out like secrets from a time long buried. 70 years of marriage, 70 years of believing she knew the man sleeping beside her, unraveled in a single afternoon. James, her husband, now frail and slouched in his recliner, simply closed his eyes as if bracing for a storm decades in the making. It began with the attic. Margaret had always been sentimental, keeping old albums and heirlooms tucked away. But while searching for their grandson's baby photo, she found a box sealed with wax and tape, marked only by a single name she didn't recognize: Elena. Inside, a photograph, a woman smiling, radiant, with her arm wrapped around a younger James, in uniform with no wedding band. Margaret couldn't breathe. The next hour spiraled. She ripped through old drawers, behind bookshelves, beneath the floorboards of their shared life. A second ring, engraved with a date 2 years before their own wedding. Letters, dozens of them, addressed to someone named Eleanor, filled with promises and longing. "When this war ends, I'll come back for you. I dreamt of our wedding again. Forever yours, James." She confronted him, her heart pounding like it was her first heartbreak all over again. Who was she, James? Who was Elena? But James didn't deny it. He didn't lie. He just whispered, "I never thought you'd find out." And then the story unfolded, one he never thought he'd tell, especially not to the woman who bore his children, who stood by his side through life's cruelties and joys. In 1944, James had been stationed in Italy. He was just 19, caught in the madness of war, when he met Elena, a local girl who risked everything to help Allied soldiers. They fell in love quickly, desperately, like people who knew time wasn't promised. He wore her ring beneath his dog tags, promised her the moon, and planned their wedding after the war. But war is chaos. During an Allied bombing raid, the village where Eleanor lived was destroyed. He searched for days, weeks, but no trace. She was gone. No funeral, no grave, just silence. Heartbroken and broken, James returned home with a piece of himself missing. 2 years later, he met Margaret. She was kind, intelligent, and steady, everything he needed to rebuild. He never told her about Eleanor. What would be the point? A dead past buried in Europe, overshadowed by the present of a growing love. He told himself it was mercy, but now, 70 years later, that lie was costing him everything. Margaret listened, frozen. Her wedding day, the vows, the memories. Were they real or just a replacement? "Did you ever love me?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. James looked at her, eyes filled with tears. "Margaret, I loved you differently. Elena was the fire. You were the home. I never stopped loving you, even while carrying the grief of a woman I once lost." The room went silent. No television, no clocks ticking, just the weight of truth pressing down like a heavy fog. But then came the twist neither of them expected. Their granddaughter, curious about the story, began researching Eleanor's name. And to everyone's astonishment, she found her. Alive, 92 years old, living in Florence, never married, never stopped believing James had died in the war. Margaret insisted on writing to her. She wanted closure. She wanted to meet the woman who had lived in the shadows of her marriage for decades. Weeks later, a letter arrived. Elena's handwriting was shaky but graceful. "I never stopped loving him," the letter read, "but I am grateful he found someone to live with, someone who gave him a life when I could not. You are a remarkable woman." They arranged a video call. James wept. Eleanor smiled with glassy eyes. They spoke like two echoes, meeting after years of silence. But what Margaret didn't expect was Eleanor's final words. "You kept your promise, James," she said. "You lived. And you loved." After the call, Margaret sat beside James in the quiet. She held his wrinkled hand and whispered, "You didn't betray me. You just carried more love than most men could. I can forgive you, not because I must, but because we've built a life worth forgiving for." The truth didn't shatter their marriage. It added layers to it. Wounds, yes, but also the deep ache of what love means when tested over time. James passed 2 years later. Margaret placed both rings, hers and Elena's, inside his casket. "Now your story is complete," she said softly. Before we end this story, let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? If this story touched you, subscribe the channel and hit that like button and drop a karma in the comments below.